Next curve.
Hey everyone, this is Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst at Next Curve. Welcome to Next Curve's Rethink webcast and our series from the radio to the Rick, or the radio to the Rick, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if I got that right, but that's okay. And I'm here with Earl Lum of EJL Wireless Research and our very special guest, Prakash Sangam of Tantra Analyst. And of course, me, Leonard Lee, and we are going to be talking about our adventures at 5G Americas Analyst Summit 2023 that happened, I think it was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm losing track of time. Yeah, I think it was on the 12th of October at the Renaissance Dallas in Richardson. And but I thought it was a nice location, a nice hotel, right?
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, but glad to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, same here. Look, the hotel was pretty nice. I think it's pretty new as well. I mean, Dallas, it's always a lottery, right? If you get into old hotels, very muggy.
Yeah.
And this hotel was pretty nice, very open. I loved it.
You're right, because I've been to Dallas probably about 6 or 7 times this year, and some of those hotels, especially around the downtown area, are kind of they're older, and they have a lot of things growing on them. So yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, hey guys, why don't you introduce yourselves? Oh, well, we already did that. Everybody knows who you guys are, right?
As far as we know.
Yeah. You guys are famous. Come on. You know?
Well, I'm just a criminal, remember? So
you don't have to keep reminding people of that, Earl.
Well, it's a good thing.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this and getting your guys' takes on what you saw this year at 5G Americas. I think both of you guys were there last year with me, right? We were all there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all I have to say is this is probably one of the best telco conferences that you can attend. I think Chris Pearson and team, they do a wonderful job putting together an agenda that everyone, I think at the end of the conference feels they wish they had more opportunity to engage with, right? Because usually they have about 10 topics and you get about 4 or 5 sessions or roundtables that you can attend. And there's always great topics. And the fact that you have to compromise is oftentimes a little frustrating. But, that's
exactly. 26 roundtable sessions for 5 time slots. You can't see even a portion of what you'd like to be able to, experience and talk to the people that are in those other sessions. There's just not enough time to cram it all in.
Agreed. And there are a lot of topics that you wanted to check out, right? It's not that, it indeed, as you mentioned, indeed was a compromise, right? You basically,
you had to pick and choose, and it would be nice if
you want to go. Yeah. And I really like this event specifically because, I've been to, like you guys, to many such events, but I like this specifically because it is not grandiose, right? You don't have huge keynotes and all that, but the value is in roundtables where you get very in a very interactive and I would say more realistic conversations. And since there is no media, I think especially operators are a little bit at ease. Usually they just stick to their standard corporate messaging, whatever that is, right? No matter what question you ask, you get always the same answer, which is basically, reading off of their messaging sheet, I would think. So, but here I think it's more intimate, smaller groups, and people tend to open up more, giving more frank opinions rather than just parroting of their standard messaging lines.
I have to tell you, in the sessions that I went to, there were some pretty gnarly questions. I have to admit, I asked a few of them, but they were really probing questions that really hit at the heart of a lot of important matters, and what I think is great, like you said, Prakash, it's a rare opportunity for the industry to get together in these really open
Mhm.
dialogues, right?
with
That
an
Mhm.
operator.
with
Yeah,
an
With
operator, right? And so
yeah,
it's
exactly.
interesting because the vendors can be a little bit nervous about what the operators say, right? So
Yeah.
there's this element of forced, let's say, honesty. I think that you really don't get anywhere else. That's why I think the consensus is everybody really loves the program that the 5G Americas team puts together. But anyway, hey, let's get into this discussion. What were your general impressions? I mean, in terms of like the tone, the themes, and the don't get to the takes yet, but what were your thoughts and impressions of the event overall? You want to start, Prakash, since you're the guest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, in my view, I mean, the whole, the initial euphoria of 5G is kind of, waning off or waned off,
Yeah.
and the whole industry is in this state of finding out, trying to find out
Mm.
what is the next big thing, right? There are a few things, none of them are immediate right now that people can see. So, it's this uncomfortable state wherein there are few things on the table. We don't know which one will pick, all of them, none of them. So how best to address it, and also, trying to address this. I won't call backlash, but there is some frustration saying, when 5G came up, there is this huge set of expectations built up.
Yeah.
The whole world will change, and that has not realized quite yet. I mean, we know, people in the know that it's not just, you flip a 5G switch on and you'll get robotic surgery, remote surgery possible, right? So
you know,
that is, they're trying to address that as well. So that's I mean, that's at a very high level, my take. So there are a lot of good discussions,
yeah.
and people involved know the difficulties, the challenges involved, also know the opportunities, but they're not 100% confident that this will be the future in next couple of years, right? So that's at a very high level.
Yeah, I don't know if 5G gave robotic surgery, intercontinental robotic surgery, a bad name, or the other way around. I think robotic,
It's a poster child, right? So I
yeah,
mean, I always use that beating point, right? So
but it's getting beat up lately quite a bit. A lot of people bringing it up, and
yeah,
that's
yeah. Where is
not
my
very
robotic
nice.
surgery? Remote robotic surgery, right? So
What about you, Earl?
I would agree with what Prakash said about, there's continued muted expectations of where things will be, but they're not here now. And they're continuing to evolve, and it'll take time
Hmm.
to get to that point. So the question is most of these networks, at least here in the Americas, have been deployed, or the majority of them have been deployed with enough geographical footprint. We have enough subs, and I guess now the question is where's the money?
Right, right, and yeah, no, that's a great point. Just to add, I mean, I think that really was what you guys have outlined, were largely the impressions that everyone walked away with. I would say that really the disappointment was really around the hype. I've been getting into a lot of chats lately about hype versus reality, and we're really disappointed with the hype. And I've done some podcasts where I've been suggesting, hey, why don't we reconstitute the narrative based on the realities of the technology? What technology base are we working with? What's the state of that technology? What's the readiness of adoption? I mean, getting back to brass tacks, right? I don't know if that entirely happened yet. I think that might be something that will be agenda for next year. But I think the impression that I got was people were looking for the pivot. The next big thing no one knows, but there's folks that are now starting to float a couple of pivots narratives, and namely private 5G. The other one is red cap, and the big challenge I think for the course of this year, going into probably MWC, is figuring out with whether or not these pivots are actually going to be directions that the hype narrative is going to want to go. Now, again, hype versus technology. The thing is the technology is amazing, right? Right, Prakash? I mean, you guys will test. The technology is amazing. The economics, the readiness, that might be that has proven to be the very different thing, right? The economics of deployment and the readiness of that technology to actually support some of the more advanced features that really encapsulated or represented the promise of 5G, right? So, I think that's great stuff, guys. So,
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, we all know the promise, and network and technology is only one piece of the puzzle, right? So the use cases, the demand for them, and the pace at which they come along, and ultimately how you make money with this investment that they have done and put a foundation. I think those are all hitting,
yeah,
vendors as well as operators now, and then they're looking at what can be done. I mean, private networks is it's a good pivot if they can, but will that be big enough for
yeah,
this large industry to sustain the next couple of years? I don't know. I'm
And,
not so sure.
and also,
Um,
Leonard, I think
mm,
the if you look at the other two legs of 5G that were not mobile broadband, all of that's coming with NR Advance. And a lot of the focus is going to be on the sensors and everything. And that's where the money hopefully was going to be made by the operators.
yeah.
And we're still in the very early stages of that. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and a dependency on SA deployment, right? Because a lot of these features, if you don't have a standalone deployment, then a network, and none of these things happen. So there's still a lot of big problems that needed to be addressed and overcome, I think. And but yeah, these pivots, like I said, right now, hype is huge. I've been getting into conversations about private networks and red cap, et cetera, where I'm just going, wow, you guys are not tuning into the dependencies here. So, but again, I think there's a bit of that, definitely a soul searching happening, as we talked about actually a couple of weeks ago. MWC, we talked about that, right, Earl?
Yeah.
This is basically folks grappling with some very sobering realities. It's basically reality hitting you in the face now, and then some folks trying to figure out, well, again, what are some of those good pivots? But I think at this point, if you're starting to hype stuff, that's not the right thing to be doing, right? Because it's obvious the hype. It really blinded people to what the real path to value should have been for 5G in many of the deployments and roadmaps that have been executed on over the last 3 years, right? So at least that's my feeling.
Yeah, I don't think there is any much appetite left to get that hype, right? So
Yeah,
even when it is real, people will really test it out and don't take things on their face value when people claim. Like private networks, I mean, we've been talking about for some time.
yeah,
How big, how soon? I think, all the things that we talked about at the event, right? Private beta, private networks, NTN, Open RAN, the Red Cap and others. Everybody, I'm sure you might heard saying as well, oh, we are still at early stage. We are still at early stage. So, so that I
yeah.
think, is a good sign that they are not trying to hype it up, but, keeping the expectations realistic. So,
Well, you know what? It's really hard. I think with the audiences that a lot of the vendors and even the operators have, it's hard for them to do that now, right?
yeah.
Because there were a few that tried to kind of bring those, those aspirational type stories, into their presentations, but it didn't last long. I have to be honest, I was one of those people that shot that stuff down really quick because we don't have time to waste with that stuff. It's like if someone comes in and says, oh, Gen AI is going to transform like the whole friggin', telco industry and is going to make another gajillion dollars of economic value and blah, blah, blah. You know what? I cut that stuff off immediately, and I'll be the first one to speak up in any of those roundtables to just cut that stuff off. I don't want to waste my time with that. Right. I don't think any of us want to waste our time with that, especially in that kind of forum. Right.
Right. And I think,
we hear it all the time.
I think that, the market's still in this, okay, we did a bunch of proof of concepts, but we didn't evolve to the next level yet.
Yeah.
Right. So we're kind of stuck at, we showed a bunch of stuff that we think we can do that's out there. Now the networks hopefully are at a level where they can support those types of services and such. But then when do they actually get deployed and how do they get deployed is the big unknown question mark for everyone out there, whether it's from the vendor or the operator. And with the applications.
Yeah.
So and how they make money with them, right? So
yeah.
I mean that's one thing. I mean, I like about this event is many of the vendors I talk to, they are realistic, right? Saying, "Oh, this is early." I mean, they're not saying they used to be like, "Oh, there's huge opportunity for private networks, and it'll be the next big thing." When you talk to them now, I mean, they are more grounded, saying, "Oh, these are, I mean, there is opportunity, but you're starting slow. Most of the network is pretty small, and you get lots of inquiries for it. And then, but when you really open up and see, I mean, either there's some of them just fishing expeditions or pretty small for major vendors to get into, right? So." And then, and also one thing, I mean, specifically since we're talking about private networks, then many of the vendors have come to realization that they cannot apply the operator template, if you will, to this, saying, oh, there'll be huge service organization, huge sales teams looking at it, because the opportunities are small. Networks are like what, 10 sites or less. So you in go to market is a little bit different. So instead of just having a large
Yeah.
sales force, business force trying to do it, you only tackle large opportunities on your own and rely on distributors and so on for smaller opportunities and so on. And collaboration is key. So those are some of the
Yeah.
good learnings. And it was heartening to hear those kind of discussions and they're talking about it rather than just saying, oh, it's large, we'll do it, and that's the next big thing and so on. So I mean,
Yeah.
maybe this event or overall, that's what good for me to hear.
Yeah. You're bringing up some really interesting points because that whole template, right? That the go to
Mhm.
market motion up and, from the technology all the way up to, the end user, that's super tricky. And I don't think
Yeah,
anyone's really figured it out. So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, to have some of that really honest conversation around, it's helpful, right? Because at us as analysts, it helps us think through and, support the industry by connecting some dots that maybe the vendors and the operators themselves might not be looking at. But anyway,
Mhm.
you know what? I wanted to really quickly, give both of you guys a chance to kind of talk through what were the things that you were looking to get out of this year's event, and then maybe what some of your takes were against that agenda that you brought to 5G America. So again, starting with our guest, the illustrious Prakash Sangam.
Maybe
Are you
Earth
ready? Did
can
you write
start
this
this
stuff down,
time.
or are you gonna go off the top of your head?
I have some things notes here. Let me look at it. So,
Yeah.
the
Cool.
the things I was looking at was one, obviously private networks that we talked about enough
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
and then Open RAN is another subject, and then NTN is the third, and some AI ML happening on the telecom space, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of Gen AI crap that we hear from everybody, everything else, but specifically to networks, right? So those are the trying to understand where where the market is. I mean, not where the market is, but how vendors and more importantly operators think about these things, right? So let's start with NTN. Private network, I think we discussed enough. So NTN, I mean, I think it was a little bit of a bubble bursting kind of a thing for many of them, saying, "Oh, NTN is doing, 3GP is working on NTN. This is the, it'll be a standard, blah blah blah." Then look, when we, dig a little deeper in terms of what is needed, oh, there's new spectrum needed. Oh, then there is new satellites needed. So when is the, the standard being finalized, and when the spectrum will be given, and when if satellites supporting these will be in the orbit to provide. I mean, they realize, I mean, it's quite far away. Whereas other proprietary technologies like, yes, the Space Mobile Link, Space Link,
Starlink.
Starlink, and then Amazon and others are already, much farther ahead in terms of getting it to customers, right? So that was kind of a revelation how these things will work. By the time the standard, will be ready and everything is ready, the non-standard proprietary might be already ahead in the game, right? Time-wise. For example,
Yeah.
I guess a good example is Tesla chargers, right? I mean, there is
Yeah.
this huge standard-based chargers, but Tesla had basically has built so much of infrastructure already, and people are kind of adopting to that standard, right?
Yeah.
So might
Piggybacking
be the
off of that.
same case there, right? So because you're already so much late in the game. That's kind of one interesting
Ah,
discussions. And
wow.
one thing was good was operators like AT&T and Rogers was there at the event. They're already started off on space mobile for some applications like emergency services and so on. So right, so that's
Mm.
a good discussion. I would say the best discussion I had on the subject at the event.
Oh,
And then
wow.
Open RAN, we all know that it's all at an early stage. I think AT&T
Really?
put in very nicely that
Uh,
there are tons of options available. We
yeah.
are doing one doesn't mean we are validating it and all others are not valid, right?
Yeah.
So uh, you know anything that you hear right now, I mean that's at least my takeaway was anything that you hear in the public sphere, it's all experiments right now. I know maybe one is good or the other is bad or whatever,
Yeah.
but nothing is final. Everything is in the flux. People are looking at it, be it inline versus side
Outside.
look aside accelerator or accelerator itself or it's integrated or anything. Everybody is experimenting and then nobody knows which will win, but one thing is sure that not all of these options will exist, so some will win, some will lose. And at the end of the day the market will still be managed by or controlled by a few large vendors, may not be the same vendors but large vendors, right? So that is
Yeah.
second. And if we can quickly squeeze the third one on AI ML, I mean, obviously, they're starting off with 5G Advanced with simple channel estimations and so on. But the questions are: oh, there is AI ML happening on the device, on the network side. How will they jibe together? I think there's still work to be done there. And also, there are which no, there are a lot of opportunities right now. We don't have to wait for 5G Advanced to use AI ML, which
Yeah.
I did not hear robust discussion on, frankly or unfortunately. It's basically, traffic analysis, optimizing your network based on how the traffic is. You definitely use AI there. A
Yeah.
lot of mundane optimization tasks, obviously billing, your data plan or, your price planning, all of that. You can use a lot of AI, which I'm sure there is some of it is happening. There is a lot more scope rather than jumping onto the big bandwagon, big thing like and using it for Airlink. You can do a lot of use a lot of AI in and improve what's the operations part of it that operators are working on right now. So I did not hear a lot of robust discussion on that.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's kind of
Oh, wow.
those things that I was looking for and what I got.
Weren't you in a bunch of my sessions? The ones
I
that I
think
was
we're
at?
in a couple of them. I mean, we're in a couple of them, right? So, and yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, we kind of both hog the session for asking a lot of questions. So,
Well, that's what you
I
usually hog the whole session with your questions.
yeah, I mean, I actually kept a little quiet this time around, so
I know. I
I
try.
asked
I
my
try.
initial
Believe it or
questions.
not, I try to do that too. Most of the
Yeah,
analysts in the room won't believe that, but Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sitting next to you. You were doing pretty good, Leonard.
Really? Yeah. I was trying to be like non-obnoxious. So, all right. Well, it's good to know
Yeah.
that to get the validation from both of you that I was not super obnoxious. But what about you, Earl? What'd you go in with?
My focus was, as always, what's new on the radio side.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have an opportunity on the Latin American, on the Cala market, but just didn't have enough sessions to be able to do that, given the other ones that were there.
No.
Because it was interesting, and Brazil is always the biggest market down there, and they're the driver for that entire region. And to understand what's still, going down in Cala, but Open RAN obviously was of a big importance and focus, just to understand and validate what I already kind of was seeing. And I think AT&T said it perfectly in terms of the disaggregation from Open RAN drives complexity, which requires you to now automate and figure out how to manage that. And I think the one negative thing for all of the emerging players was when they stated the fact that, there's opportunities for third-party radio guys to make niche products, which is pretty much a death sentence to any of those guys, because there's no way you can make money in a niche area. And that's where all the other radio guys died a horrible death before Open RAN happened. So that wasn't a good feedback data point from AT&T. And if they're indicative of the other operators who are, again, expecting performance parity and all of these other things, that is going to be very difficult for the radio guys to do, or the emerging radio guys to do. And I think Nokia also reiterated how much money they spend on R&D every year on the radios and on the software features to be able to get those to work. And it's not an easy thing for a newcomer to just jump into the pool and do that. So I think that just made it pretty clear that it's going to be hard for the non-incumbents to really get a substantial amount of traction. Now, with that said, I think there was also some issues of, Open RAN seems to work well until you get to massive MIMO, right? And massive MIMO seems to be where the transition and the problems start arising. It was interesting to hear Samsung state that, they've already deployed the massive MIMO radios in Japan. And certainly I think Team Japan has their act together and they know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a long time. So I think the question is can it be done in other regions that's not Team Japan is the question, specifically in Europe and elsewhere, where there is a major focus on not just macro radios, but on the massive MIMO. And what is the problem? I don't know. No one really highlighted is it on the front haul link side, or what's not talking between the radio and the distributed unit is still kind of unknown at this point coming out of the sessions. It just seemed like that was a major problem there. And so, again, nothing new that we didn't already know, but it was just good confirmation of the fact that it's going to be a tough road ahead for the non-incumbents or the new players that are trying to get into Open RAN. And then I guess some of the newer technologies, as we look into higher order MIMO, that was very interesting as we go to 128 and 256 radio channel architectures for massive MIMO. We already saw some early indications of how that might look like at MWC in Barcelona, but it's going to be a huge challenge, I think, for the radio guys, and that's certainly going to affect the component players and the semiconductor players as well. So that was good to get an update on where the RAN technology is emerging. Mm-hmm. Some of the other sessions I was in terms of sustainability and such, really didn't get much out of those sessions in terms of what was happening. And I think in terms of this road to 6G session, really have no idea.
You went to that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows what was going on in that session, or where they're going to be, other than we know that NR Advanced is, again, going to focus on the industrial side of 5G and on the sensors. And then, at least the bands for 6G, hopefully they won't be, in the hundreds of gigahertz like people were talking about before, and they'll be more in a more realistic amount of spectrum, like 12 or 13. So that was good, and I really liked the keynote that the gentleman from NTIA had on day 2. I think that was one of the highlights of the show for me in terms of understanding, what is that particular government agency here in the Americas trying to do, and trying to prevent another FAA debacle that we had at the beginning of 5G.
Yeah. By the way, his name is Scott Harris.
Yeah. I think Scott did a great job.
Yeah.
And really I think that was a great highlight.
It's funny too. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's very funny. The jokes. No one did come up with a joke, right? To give him.
Yeah.
I mean, he wisely, avoided all the questions that were asked to him, right? He would always say.
Well, he's a lawyer too.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you may talk about 6G session. I think that was one. I attended that as well. I think that was the least attended session. I was really surprised, but when
that says a lot.
Into the discussion, it was pretty, pretty obvious why it was very less attended.
Yeah. So, okay, my stuff. The highlight was actually having a selfie with John Baker and Paul Chanelier. I forgot how to pronounce his name. Oh my God, he's going to kill me. Anyways, Paul Erickson, he's a VP of networks. Getting those two guys in the same selfie as me, that was kind of revolutionary, But then I missed out on the session where they were the experts or in the room, right? I heard that was quite a lively discussion, and maybe one of you guys went to it. I don't know.
I missed that one too, so I don't know which session that was, but I would have remembered that one.
Yeah. I didn't go either.
Kill me. Hi, Paul. Sorry. Next time I'll have to ask. You got a French name or a French-looking name. I don't want to screw it up. I'm really bad with French wine names and chateaus, so please. Don't be pissed off at me. But Open RAN definitely was something that I was interested in. There's certain things that I picked up on that, because you guys know that I go to a lot of different types of analyst events and cover a wide range of stuff. But the short of it is this, that the Open RAN movement, which I think many of the representatives were of that movement were in attendance at Fuzzy. Is it called Fuzzy or Fuzzy?
Fuse.
In Madrid.
Conference in Madrid, which is a tip event, right? Which I wish I could have gone to that, but unfortunately, I had a conflict. I agree I agree with the assessment that you provided, Prakash, that it's unfortunately still kind of early. I think there's still a lot of hype driving some rather exaggerated expectations around the topic. And I think for the benefit of the movement, you guys have to squash that stuff and start talking really honestly about what you're dealing with, right? There's Cloud RAN, there's vRAN, then there's Open RAN, right? You don't have to get the benefits. 90% of the benefits of Open RAN at a technical level you can get with Cloud RAN, right? And
the vRAN,
cloud native RAN,
right?
That open stuff is for a different agenda. And if you put that in front of everything else, you will probably, continue to wallow in stagnation, which doesn't help the movement. But that dilemma it has been very clear for me for a long time. It continues to get validated, but it also bothers me that the movement continues to undermine itself in certain ways, right? I mean, if you don't know what your technology can do today for your customers, you cannot place it and position it well for success, right? And that's what the problem that the movement has had for the past, 4 or 5 years is exactly that, trying to place the it's not really a technology, but to place Open RAN in a way that doesn't fit for success. And everyone should regard that as a big problem. The other thing that I looked at, and Prakash, you and I were there, and you guys can disagree with that stuff. That's fine. I don't care. But you know what? I think you're gonna have anybody's gonna have a hard time with that rebuttal. And I welcome anyone to make any challenges in the comments. The other thing is AI. Man, the Gen AI stuff, super. I mean, this is like it's like research phase. Anyone that goes around saying that Gen AI is going to revolutionize network optimization and planning and management, ask a lot of really hard questions. And if you want to know what those hard questions are, come talk to me, come talk to any of these other guys here, Prakash and Earl, at whatever level of the stack you're talking about, and you'll be better off for it. I think this whole AI pivot, what is AI native? These things are super dubious. And I think the industry needs to really do its favor and be very cautious about this pivot that's happening right now, where everyone's talking about AI networks and XYZ. Be very cautious. And, but here's the cool thing. We had I attended 2 sessions, one on network optimization and another one on AI and 5G. And they were really good sessions. Prakash, I think you were on a couple of them. And there was some really honest, grounded discussions. That's how we came to this sort of realization that, hey, look, ChatGPT is not going to transform your RAN, or your network. And anyone who claims that it will, hold them to account, please, so we can stop the nonsense. The other thing is, what else do I look at? I looked at a lot of the AI stuff, and then enterprise evolution 5G. I guess this is a little bit of a different twist. Yes, it's private 5G, but focus more on the use cases. And there are some, but I think a lot of conversations still stuck around mines and ports. And what's very clear, and it's something that I said at MWC, was all the enterprise 5G is looking a lot like the IoT. And if that's the case, everybody better think twice about how to approach this pivot, right? Think very deeply about it. And I think in terms of asking questions, the entire industry is very early. I don't think those important questions have been asked yet. I think there's shell shock at the moment with how disappointed people are with the 5G hype and the reality not supporting much of it. But even going forward, I think the industry really needs to be cautious. So how's that?
I mean, I think if you look at the private 5G stuff, and we talked about this after MWC, is what is the configuration for that enterprise? Is it just connectivity, or are you doing something more? And if it's on the industrial side, then it gets much more complicated, right? And you want a RAN and core in a box for whatever application. Is it going to be more complicated? And like Prakash said earlier, are you talking 10 radios? Are you talking 50 radios, or what is it? And what is the actual software on the industrial side that the RAN guys don't have, that they need to partner with to make that network talk to that robotic machine, right? Yeah. And I think that's where and again, if we're only looking at 50 radios a project, then how many tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of projects is it going to take to where I care about it from a radio perspective, right?
Oh, dude, you are like hitting on such a huge point. right there. I just had a conversation about that this week.
Yeah, I agreed.
Even from a server
Yeah.
perspective, it's,
uh,
it's not pretty. And I
yeah,
think
and
I can tell you right now, we already see 2, 3 steps ahead of how the mainstream industry is thinking about this stuff right now, and about 5
right.
steps ahead of the marketing teams. So, if there's any marketing teams listening to this, you should be really worried.
Right. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not
so
going to drive
Very
server
worried.
sales or radio sales or hardware sales to a
yeah,
level you're going to care,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you're just a
yeah,
complete startup and any sale is a good sale.
Yeah.
yeah.
Love small numbers. Yeah.
And there are two. I mean, specifically on these, the two kinds of markets, right? One is the early for private networks. I mean, is early enterprise only connectivity market. I
Hmm.
mean, that is like ports and other things that they mentioned. They kind of have some validity because you need mobility, you need
Yeah.
reliability, and you need handoff and other things, right? So that coverage, so it makes sense for those two. But for
Absolutely.
many others, anything that is indoor, like hospitals,
Yeah.
um, hospitality avenues and options, those I think the need is not there yet. If it is only for connectivity, regular broadband connectivity,
Mm.
then anything that is outdoor, which needs larger coverage and that needs mobility with hands off and so on, and some good reliability and low latency, right? Not super low, but regular latency.
Yeah.
Then cellular can work. Cellular will be ideal. Wi-Fi cannot, might work, but it will be very hard. So
Yeah.
there are not too many use cases that have all these characters, right? So ports, people talking about ports and mines because those have. Others,
Yeah.
not so much. Take venues or hospitality and other things, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you mentioned, Earl, industrial, I would say that is a very, very long time span, right? Time scale.
Right.
I mean, it's been like what, 2, 3 years where many people, many of these vendors did TSN, time sensitive networking
Yeah.
demos. I mean, they're like announcements between Siemens, Emerson, and few others with the vendors doing demos, proof of concept. GE is also involved, but haven't seen anything beyond initial testing and proof of concept and announcements, right? Because I mean, they say everybody says the cycle is very long, but we haven't even seen that cycle start yet. So
Mm.
I think that is a lot of 5G, second phase of 5G is relying on that. We don't have good visibility, and that is kind of scary in terms of private networks or industrial as such. If I may comment on the Open RAN as well, I think as we've discussed, right, and I've been saying this ever since my first podcast a few years ago, is it's going to be a two-step process. Right now, especially in the brown fields, it will be cloud and virtual RAN as the first step with single vendor, and then once with open interfaces, and then if the open interfaces work, then go to multi-vendor Open RAN. So everybody gets confused Open RAN with vRAN and cloud RAN, or
Yeah.
virtual as you want to call it. So that is happening. vRAN is happening and cloud RAN is happening, but with open interfaces. But with multi-vendor, I think that will be a next step. So whenever that happens, maybe the second expansion of second phase of 5G or whatever.
Right. And Prakash, I think when you talked about the venues and stuff for the private 5G, obviously if it's meant for the all of the point of service machines and things of that sort on the back end for that venue, then sure, you can have a network,
Mm,
and whether it's Wi-Fi or 5G to be able to enable that, that's an opportunity. But the rest of that is going to be a DAS that addresses everyone else coming into that venue. So
yeah.
all the stuff that we saw that was supposed to happen on in building with CBRS has still not happened at this
Mm,
point, and that's going to be a very, very long road to get that particular market on the in building side to pony up money. at this particular point. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of potential near-term opportunities there. It'll always be on the slide, but whether or not that becomes reality is probably still off in the distance.
Yeah, and the one interesting point of validation I got was when I asked oh geez, what was his name? The gentleman from AT&T, the VP
Adam.
networks.
Adam, I forgot his last name.
Adam.
Yeah, when I asked him, well, what is the role of SMO? He goes, number one, it's the first thing you go with. It's all about integration, and it's not about it's not about rip and replace. That's not happening. That roadmap for AT&T is going to be a long one, probably for Verizon as well. Yeah. And so during that, as you're transitioning and this is like basic like IT stuff, right? Portfolio management and and what you do to modernize your infrastructure. That the modernization roadmap, this is like basic stuff. You always need something to support the integration and support capabilities, legacy capabilities, but also enable new ones at different levels. And so that was one of the cool validations that I got out of 5G Americas. And there's actually something that I told a lot of Open RAN vendors that, this might be an area that you really should focus on. But I think people kind of overlooked it. They went straight to the RIC and the near time RIC, making the discussion about the RAN as close to the radio as possible versus what is that thing that's really going to support brownfield transformation and adoption of Open RAN. So there's a nugget for the audience if you didn't know that. But anyway, gentlemen, I think we're up on time here. Any last words about the event?
NTN is another interesting subject. I mean, it's been happening for some time, but got into a lot of public domain because of Apple. I think there was good discussion happen in my view. I think that is the value that operators and the vendors got out of this meeting is that they have to think really hard on how they approach it, short term and long term. I think that was a very revealing discussion.
I think
for me, Leonard, it'd be nice if Big Red were to show up someday, but we both know and we all know that's probably never going to happen. So at least, that would add at least a different flavor and perspective from a U.S. market, right? And instead of just AT&T and T-Mo always showing up.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, hey guys, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining me. And it's always fun, absolutely engaging. I think we got pretty serious here. But I think these are perspectives that the industry really should contemplate, and sourced from some really honest and frank conversations that we had at 5G Americas. I want to, thank Chris Pearson and his team for putting.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Once again, fantastic program. Also, all the sponsors and all the vendors and operators who attended and fostered such wonderful, insightful conversations. And I admire their courage.
Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely. And I also want to than the reporters.
And also want to remind that I missed Neville at the event. Used to be like all over there, especially during cocktail and other hours. I missed missed him during that time. I mean, Wolf did a great job presenting 5G America's view. But I indeed missed Neville Ray this time.
Yeah, well, he's still around, right? He's still doing some stuff.
He retired, I'm sure, and enjoying his life.
On to better things. He's got less. He doesn't have to worry about wireless anymore.
I think he is. but not being accountable for it, which is sometimes a nice thing.
It's probably very freeing for him.
Yeah. But thanks, guys, and thanks for everyone.
Right.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in. You can reach Earl Lum at ejlwireless.com, and you can connect with him on LinkedIn. You can reach Prakash Sangam at www.tantraanalyst.com, and you can connect with him on LinkedIn as well. He also has this really great podcast called Tantra's Mantra, and you can find it on your favorite podcast platform, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All of them.
Cool.
Perfect.
And and then please subscribe to the Next Curve YouTube channel. You're probably watching this video on the channel, so hit that subscribe button. The easiest thing to do is also to just go to our research portal and media center at www.next-curve.com. It's like a one-stop shop for all Next Curve research, content, media, and you'll be notified when we publish new articles and content just like this great discussion and webcast that we're doing right now. And also make sure to subscribe to our newsletter on LinkedIn. And we'll see you next time. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Leonard.
Right. Thank you. Bye bye.